Agatha reached out to the shadowy figure, seemingly trying to bind it to her will. But the figure turned on her, its dark tendrils wrapping around her in a vice-like grip. Agatha's screams filled the night air as the shadowy figure pulled her into its dark embrace. Within moments, the figure and Agatha were engulfed in a blinding flash of light, and then, as quickly as it had appeared, the figure and Agatha were gone. The mist dissipated, leaving the villagers in stunned silence. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled in the heart of Africa, where the sun kissed the earth with warmth and the winds carried the songs of the ancestors, there was a woman named Agatha. Agatha was no ordinary woman. She was the village's most skilled cook, revered by some and feared by many. Her culinary prowess was unmatched. Every dish she prepared was a masterpiece of flavor and aroma. But beneath her charming smile and graceful movements lurked a darkness that few suspected, and even fewer dared to confront. Okadu was a village that thrived on its traditions and the closeness of its people. It was a place where everyone knew everyone, and news traveled fast, sometimes faster than the wind itself. The villagers were simple folks who lived off the land, cultivating yams, cassava, and maize. They celebrated life with vibrant festivals, where music, dancing, and food played central roles. At the heart of these celebrations was Agatha. Her food had a way of bringing people together, making them forget their troubles, and leaving them craving more. Whether it was a wedding, a naming ceremony, or a harvest festival, Agatha's cooking was always in demand. Her jollof rice was legendary, her soup was second to none, and her bean balls were so light and fluffy that they seemed to melt in the mouth. But as much as the villagers loved her food, they could not shake the feeling that something was off about Agatha. Her eyes, though often filled with warmth, had a way of piercing through a person, as if she could see into their very soul. There were rumors and whispers among the elders and the villagers that Agatha had made a pact with dark forces, that her culinary skills were not merely a result of talent, but something far more sinister. It all began one fateful evening when little Oliver, the village chief's son, went missing. Oliver was a lively boy, always full of energy and mischief. He was last seen playing near Agatha's compound, chasing after a chicken that had escaped its pen. When night fell and Oliver did not return home, the village was thrown into a frenzy. A search party was quickly organized, with men and women combing through the fields, the forest, and even the nearby river. But Oliver was nowhere to be found. Days turned into weeks, and the search continued, but hope was fading. The villagers were distraught, especially Oliver's parents, who were inconsolable. And then, as if fate had a cruel sense of timing, another child went missing, Amina, the blacksmith's daughter. Like Oliver, she was last seen near Agatha's compound. The villagers were now on edge. 2 children gone without a trace, both seen near the same place before they disappeared. Suspicion began to grow, and eyes turned toward Agatha. But no one dared to confront her, for fear of what she might do. It was not long before strange occurrences began to be reported by those who lived close to Agatha's home. At night, they would hear strange noises and whispers carried by the wind, the clanging of pots and pans long after midnight, and the occasional cry that seemed to come from deep within the earth. Some claimed to have seen Agatha talking to shadows, her voice low and unintelligible, as if she were communicating with spirits. One day, an inquisitive young man named Chinedu decided to investigate. Chinedu was known for his bravery and curiosity, often getting himself into trouble for poking his nose where it did not belong. But this time, he was determined to find out the truth about Agatha. He had grown up in the village and had seen how the disappearances of children had torn families apart. He could no longer stand idly by. Chinedu began by watching Agatha from a distance, studying her every move. He noticed that she was meticulous in her cooking, always selecting the freshest ingredients from the market. But there were times when she would venture deep into the forest, returning with bags full of strange herbs and roots that no one in the village had ever seen before. She would store these ingredients in a small locked room in her house, never allowing anyone inside. One night, under the cover of darkness, Chinedu sneaked into Agatha's compound. He had seen her leave earlier in the evening and knew she would not return for several hours. He made his way to the small room where she kept the mysterious ingredients. The door was locked, but Chinedu, ever resourceful, managed to pick the lock with a thin piece of metal he had fashioned for such purposes. As the door creaked open, Chinedu was hit by a strong and a pungent odor that made his eyes water. He covered his nose with his hand and stepped inside. The room was dimly lit by a single oil lamp, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Shelves lined the walls, which was filled with jars and containers of all shapes and sizes. Some were filled with herbs and powders, others with thick and viscous liquids. But what caught Chinedu's attention were the bones lying on the floor. They were small delicate bones that looked disturbingly human. His heart pounded in his chest as he realized what he was seeing. These were not just any bones, they were the bones of children. Oliver and Amina had not simply disappeared, they had been taken, and their bones were now part of Agatha's dark collection. Chinedu felt a rise in his throat, but he forced himself to stay calm. He needed evidence, something concrete to show the villagers. He reached for one of the jars, intending to take it as proof, but just as his hand touched the glass, he heard a sound behind him. He spun around, and there, standing in the doorway, was Agatha. Agatha's eyes blazed with a fury that chilled Chinedu to the bone. She did not scream or shout, she simply stared at him, her lips curling into a sinister smile. "Curiosity can be a dangerous thing, young man," she said, her voice low and menacing. "You should have stayed away." Chinedu's mind raced. He knew he had to escape, but Agatha was blocking the only exit. Desperation gave him strength, and he lunged at her, hoping to push past and make a run for it. But Agatha was quicker than he anticipated. With a swift movement, she grabbed a jar from the shelf and hurled it at him. The jar shattered against the wall, releasing a thick and black smoke that filled the room. Chinedu coughed and gagged, as the acrid smoke burned his lungs. His vision blurred, and his limbs felt heavy, as if they were no longer his own. He stumbled backward, struggling to stay on his feet. Agatha advanced on him, her eyes gleaming with malevolent delight. "You should not have meddled in things you do not understand," she hissed. "Now you will suffer the consequences." But just as Agatha reached out to grab him, Chinedu felt a surge of strength. He mustered all his strength and charged forward, knocking Agatha off balance. She fell to the floor with a cry of surprise, and Chinedu bolted out of the room, the smoke still clinging to him like a dark shroud. He ran through the village, gasping for breath, the terror of what he had seen driving him forward. He burst into the village square, where a group of villagers had gathered for an evening meeting. They stared at him in shock as he stumbled to a halt, his face pale and his clothes covered in soot. "Agatha has been killing the children," Chinedu gasped. "She's using their bones in her cooking." The villagers were stunned into silence. They had suspected something was wrong with Agatha, but this was beyond anything they had imagined. The village chief, Oliver's father, stepped forward, his face ashen. "What are you saying, Chinedu?" he demanded. "Are you certain of this?" Chinedu nodded, still struggling to catch his breath. "I saw the bones. In her house, she tried to kill me." The chief turned to the crowd. "We must confront her," he said, his voice trembling with anger. "We cannot allow this evil to continue." The villagers, armed with torches and weapons, marched toward Agatha's compound. They moved as one, a wave of righteous fury that swept through the village. As they approached her house, they could see her standing in the doorway, watching them with a calm and an almost amused expression. "So, you've come to see the truth for yourselves," Agatha said, her voice carrying across the courtyard. "I suppose it was only a matter of time." "Enough, woman," the chief shouted. "We know what you have done. And you will answer for your crimes." Agatha's smile faded, and her eyes grew cold. "You think you can judge me," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "You, who have feasted on my food, who have begged for my cooking at every celebration. You are all hypocrites." "Stop talking," one of the villagers shouted. "We know what you are." Agatha's expression hardened. "Very well," she said. "If it's the truth you want, then the truth you shall have." With a wave of her hand, the door to the small room where Chinedu had discovered the bones flew open. The villagers gasped as they saw the ghastly sight inside, jars filled with dark liquids, shelves lined with strange herbs, and the unmistakable bones of children. The evidence of Agatha's dark practices was undeniable. The chief stepped forward, his face a mask of anguish and determination. "Agatha, you have been exposed," he declared. "You will come with us and face justice." Agatha's eyes flared with a mix of anger and desperation. "You think you can stop me now," she sneered. "You think you understand what I have done. You know nothing of the power I wield." Before anyone could react, Agatha began to chant in a language that none of the villagers understood. Her voice rose in a crescendo, and the air around her seemed to crackle with dark energy. The villagers recoiled in fear, but the chief stood firm, his resolve unshaken. "Don't let her magic deceive you," the chief shouted. "We have truth on our side." Chinedu, still shaken but determined, stepped forward. "I saw the bones," he said. "I saw what you have done. You cannot hide from justice." Agatha's eyes narrowed as she turned her gaze on him. "You meddling fool," she hissed. "You think you can stand against me? I am beyond your comprehension." Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, and a dark, swirling mist began to rise from the floor. The villagers scrambled back, but the chief and a few brave souls stood their ground. The mist turned into a shadowy figure, a monstrous, an ethereal being that seemed to pulsate with malevolent energy. "Enough," the chief bellowed. "We will not be cowed by your tricks. We are here to bring you to justice." The shadowy figure roared, but the chief and the villagers, bolstered by their unity and courage, pressed forward. Chinedu, gathering his remaining strength, picked up a ceremonial staff that had been left at the chief's side. He stepped into the fray, using the staff to deflect the dark energies that lashed out at them. With a final and a defiant cry, Agatha reached out to the shadowy figure, seemingly trying to bind it to her will. But the figure turned on her, its dark tendrils wrapping around her in a vice-like grip. Agatha's screams filled the night air as the shadowy figure pulled her into its dark embrace. Within moments, the figure and Agatha were engulfed in a blinding flash of light, and then, as quickly as it had appeared, the figure and Agatha were gone. The mist dissipated, leaving the villagers in stunned silence. The room was now empty, save for the remnants of Agatha's dark practices. The chief and the villagers began to clear the room, their expressions a mix of relief and sorrow. In the days following Agatha's disappearance, Okadu began the difficult process of healing. The families of the missing children were given a proper farewell, and a memorial was erected in their honor. The village came together to celebrate their lives and to remember the joy they had brought to their community. Chinedu was hailed as a hero for his bravery, but he remained humble. He had faced unimaginable fear and had witnessed the depth of human darkness, but he found solace in the strength and unity of his people. He continued to support the village as they rebuilt and tried to regain a sense of normalcy. The elders, recognizing the importance of vigilance and community, began to teach the villagers about the dangers of neglecting their traditional beliefs and the power of unity in the face of adversity. They also emphasized the importance of keeping a watchful eye on their surroundings and understanding the true nature of those who claim to hold power. As time passed, the memory of Agatha and the horrors she had wrought became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the darkness that can lie hidden beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. The village of Okadu gradually returned to its celebrations and festivals, but with a renewed sense of awareness and a deeper appreciation for the bond that held them together. The story of Agatha the evil cook, and how she was exposed became a legend passed down through generations. It served as a reminder that true justice and strength come from the unity of a community and the courage to confront even the darkest of evils. And so, the village of Okadu thrived once more, its people stronger and wiser, ever vigilant against the shadows that might creep into their midst.